Thank you for attending today's webinar on how to increase employee engagement through competency-based talent management. We're excited to have you all with us. Just a couple housekeeping rules. We are going to have this presentation available for download since we are recording it probably by tomorrow, and it'll be available on our website in our Learning Center. Please feel free to ask questions along the way, and you can use the question box in your little panel there, and we are going to hold questions for the last 10 or 15 minutes of the webinar. Excuse me. This webinar is about 45 minutes, and during the webinar, we're going to take 3 polls and share that information with you just to see where everybody's at in terms of their career competencies. My name is Linda Janak, and I'm the CEO of Talent Guard. We are a full-service talent management software suite in the cloud, and we're most known for our career pathing technology to drive employee engagement. And your presenter today is Christine. She is with HRSG, and they are a leading competency development company, and I'm really excited to have her with us today. We created a partnership with HRSG a couple of months ago because we were looking for a way to add more value within the software by distributing a very high quality competency framework, job role profiles, and a lot of other value added content as part of that, so that we could create a standardized system from which organizations can really build out a world-class global talent management strategy. And our presenter, Christine, what I'm going to do is ask her at this time to introduce herself and lead us through the webinar. And Christine, if you want to go ahead and do that, that would be cool.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone, and welcome. And thank you, Linda, for this opportunity to discuss with our audience today how competencies can be used to increase employee engagement in their organization. It's always a pleasure, Linda, working with your company. I'm a senior director at HRSG and oversee all competency-based management projects in North America. I've been developing and implementing competencies for 25 years and have really seen the difference in organizations that have adopted a competency-based management approach as part of their talent management strategy. Today, I'd like to talk to you about how you can engage your employees through the use of competencies as a talent management strategy, as Linda mentioned. And what we'll do, we'll have a look at what competencies are, what they entail, the benefits to be derived from competencies, best practice in implementing competencies, and how they link and integrate into different part of the talent management spectrum. I'm going to go through 3 real case studies of how competencies were applied in different HR applications. And as Linda mentioned, we'll leave some time at the end, 5 to 10 minutes, to answer any questions you may have on what was presented today. Before I start, I just wanted to give you just a very brief introduction to HRSG and the service we provide to clients like yourself. We've been operating in the competency space for over 25 years, and I'm really proud to say this, that we're seen as thought leaders in this field, helping organizations to articulate the competencies they need for success in their workplace, to help address skill deficiencies, and provide the learning solutions, or identify the learning solutions required to close those gaps. We help identify and provide practical tools to address those gaps and help clients improve performance both at an individual and organizational level. So we value our partnership with Talent Guard. As Linda mentioned, it's only been a few months. And together, I think, we bring our clients a holistic, pragmatic talent management software suite that's fully supported with competencies and competency-based management expertise. So let's look as to why a company would be motivated to use competencies as part of their talent management strategy. So let's look at the return on investment that some of this research shows. The Burson research company, now with Deloitte Touche, found that structured talent management systems that use competencies for numerous talent management areas yielded significant positive results for those companies. Results like being able to develop greater leaders, make better hiring decisions, etc. And earlier research that looked at companies using competencies in very specific talent management application found that competencies impacted their employee performance and the bottom line. I've been implementing CBM initiatives, competency-based management initiatives, as I mentioned, for a long time, and with different types of organization. And these benefits are real and have really proven to drive engagement and performance in an organization. They really can make a significant difference. I love this unknown quote. An organization that does not succeed because it is big or long established. It succeeds because there are people in it who love it, sleep it, dream it, and build future plans for it. Let's face it, without employee commitment and engagement, how can an organization achieve its goal? To me, a solid strategy for increasing employee engagement involves providing employees with opportunities and a resource for career development and mobility within the organization. Getting your employees engaged involves satisfying some basic needs. A need for them to learn, to advance, and to make progress for themselves. Employers who put this kind of engagement strategy in place can really impact their bottom line. A sound employee engagement program provides employees with meaningful work opportunities to develop skills, competencies, and experience, and opportunities to take on new roles and greater responsibilities within their organization. Competencies can help you engage your employees, and I'll show you how through this webinar. Think about the behaviors you need in your organization to achieve your goals. Demonstrating the right behaviors required to achieve those goals can make a tremendous difference for organizational success and employee satisfaction. Why? Competencies provide clear information about how an employee needs to behave. They give the managers tools to measure performance and give constructive feedback, and they provide key tools to help employees develop their competencies for the next job level. They provide that clear, consistent message that helps to drive performance improvement and behavior change in an organization. Now, I want you to think about behaviors for a minute, and I'm going to launch a poll, and I want you to think of a recent wow service experience that you've had in a restaurant. What did the server do to make it so exceptional and great. Identify one thing in the poll that the server did that made it so great. Here they are. Okay, give you a minute to pick an answer. Okay. So here are the results. 38% of you said feeling greeted in a polite, warm fashion. 44% said they were attentive, they were observant. 6% said they asked about preference or allergies. 13% said they explained menu in a compelling way. Now, why I ask you that is that just imagine if you were able to define the behavior for successful performance, like with the waiter for a wow service, what would that look like? What would be the specific behaviors you would need to articulate and identify that you could use to clarify expectations for your employees, take that guessing game out of what do I need to do to achieve my goals or be successful. You've created a common language that you can use to hire employees with those kinds of behaviors that could demonstrate that, to be able to assess their performance against these, and to train against these. Now you've enabled your employees to align behaviors with the goals of your organization because you've articulated those critical behaviors needed for successful performance. All right. So we'll move on to the next slide. There we go. So when I look as to why organizations turn to competency-based talent management, it's because it helps to be able to think of what is it that I have in my organization that I want to achieve. I want to align my strategic vision, my mandate, with employee behaviors so that can impact the business results that we get in an organization. Imagine your company, if they could shape its workforce so that employees could possess key but critical competencies. For example, if you sell and service equipment, your vision is to be known as a go-to company in the business, and you can create revenue through excellent customer service. So you define the critical competencies for your business as customer service, initiative, business savvy, and focus on results. If all employees possess these key competencies, think of the business results you could achieve in terms of sales, customer loyalty, and making smart business decisions if everyone could demonstrate that. Competencies really help translate the strategic vision of a company into specific employee behaviors, resulting in improved business results. That's the power when you start aligning employee behavior with organizational goals. Because competencies form a bridge between how the employee needs to behave and the success of the organization. It's hard. I've talked to a lot of employees in organization, and it's hard for some employees to relate to the vision in the company, in the organization with respect to their daily work. And companies help employees see how, let's say, their attention to quality or their concern for the customer can contribute to the success of the organization. This recognition really helps employees feel also more valued. It helps them to understand really the importance of their role. So let's take a closer look at what competencies are and how they are used in talent management. So let's start with the definition of what is a competency. So here's the definition: observable abilities, skills, knowledge, motivations, or traits that are defined in terms of the behaviors needed for successful job performance. And the strength of the competency to me is observable. Observable behavior, a competency that's defined in observable terms that should answer the question, how will you know it when you see it? So let's look at one for a minute. Let's look at this competency. A good competency model should have a definition, but it should have different proficiency level with discrete behaviors for all of these levels that are critical for successful performance, like you see here for interactive communication. If I said to you, for example, that my professional HR team should all possess interactive communication. Well, what does that mean in my role as an HR professional, or in my role as an HR manager, or in my role as an executive HR director? Well, you've taken the guessing game out when you're able to clearly define the behaviors for that HR professional, which would be here listed under proficiency level 2. For interactive communication at that level, you would need to be able to foster two-way communications with your client. And that's further defined by the specific behaviors listed here underneath that particular notion. And now you've removed that guessing game of how should I behave with respect to that competency, and you've clarified the expectation for all the employees, be it in an HR professional role or as an HR manager, as an executive HR director. You can create a conversation with an employee about how you expect them to behave and demonstrate that particular competency in their job. So I'd like to take another poll, and I want you to think about behaviors you would need to be defined in your organization. And I'd like you to tell me in this poll how competencies would help in your organization. And I'd ask you to pick one of these. Give you a minute to make your selection. Wow, more accurate feedback with respect to performance. That's interesting. 47% of you picked that. 32, better defined career paths for employees. Better employee fit in a job role, 11%. Better organizational performance, not so much. Targeted training for employees, 11%. It's interesting. When I first started in this field 20-some years ago, the number one reason organization used competency was for learning and development. And then we saw that jump to performance management. And now what I'm seeing more, and I was at an HR conference in Toronto a few weeks ago, and it was to better define career paths for role with respect to employee engagement and retention. That was a huge number one reason why people were using competencies. We're seeing more and more of that. So let's take a okay, we'll close that and go to our next slide. Okay. And let's look at having at our next slide, and let's look at the benefits of using competencies as the foundation for managing talent in an organization. So there are many reasons to do this, and it makes a lot of sense when you're looking at using competencies for improving hiring decision. Huge benefit of that is that you have clearly articulated the behaviors required for successful performance in a job, and then you're able to integrate those in your selection process, which enables you to better match that job to an employee with those particular competencies. So you increase that fit, that right fit within that job. They help in providing employees with an understanding of what's needed to be successful in their current and future role, and to me, increasing employee satisfaction, which leads to often a reduced turnover rate. Employees gain more of a sense of empowerment and control over their careers when they know what's expected, and when they're when looking at their current job and then moving towards their next career move as well. And it really just clarifies organizational expectation for performance. And now I'm in a better position as an employee because I feel I have a better sense of control over my job because I know what the expectations are for successful performance in a job. And it shortens the learning curve for employee. It allows both the organization and the employees to focus on those competencies that are really needed for successful performance. There are many benefits in using competencies in an organization. And I think the big one for an organization, just knowing the competency needed to achieve an organization's vision really allows it to identify the gaps between the current skills and competencies of employees and those needed in the desired future state. This allows the organization to be able to set plans in motion to manage their talent towards achieving, those desired changes. Having a standardized competency framework, Talent Guard is able to optimize the end-to-end talent management process and ensure consistency between the software module. For example, in performance, a company can evaluate an employee against a specific job role expectation and use the same profile in career pathing so that employees can assess readiness against future job roles. Like a single framework, it makes sense. It makes it easier to perform analysis on the data for reporting, analytics, and decision making. All right, enough said about the theory of competency and showing you that. I'd like to focus now on 3 vignettes, or those case studies I mentioned at the front, and work through how competencies were applied in these. And these are all based, by the way, on real company examples. Some of what you see might look disturbingly familiar. The first 2 vignettes we're going to look at companies that don't use competency in their talent management process, while the third vignette integrates competency into its talent management. system. So let's start with vignette number 1, which deals with a poor hiring decision. So let's meet Joe. Here's Joe. He came from a large company where he was a senior programmer with little opportunity to expand his career. So he left this job for another company that offered him a product development manager position where he was managing a software team. This was a smaller software company, but he was enticed by the opportunity to become a manager. He was driven by that. So during the interview stage, there was a lot of discussion about his education, his knowledge of IT, and his experience in working with software. Given his background, the company felt he had a lot to offer in terms of advancing their software. So they made the decision to hire Joe. Uh-oh. After 6 months, Joe had underperformed, and there were some serious problems that arose with his team. So Joe was let go. Not a good scenario. Now, I just want to look at why things didn't work out with Joe. What happened? What happened here? Joe really didn't adapt well to the new company, given his new role as a manager in a small company. Joe had been used to a fairly well-defined programmer role in a big company. It was really a poor fit, a very poor fit. He had difficulty working with his team and fitting in, and he wasn't quick with respect to learning in terms of some of the gaps that he experienced and what he needed to have in terms of skills to perform effectively. And Joe really didn't have a clear understanding of the expectation and for this role and for success in his given role. So it was inevitable that things went south, I think, in terms of not being able to meet the targets that were given to him with respect to the project he was meeting. And he wasn't able to motivate his team to achieve the goals that he was being also measured against. So it was a real serious problem when you looked at the outcome of and the impacts that can happen to, well, what happened to this organization and what can happen to an organization as a result of this scenario. No hire to me is better than a bad hire. As you can see, the organization paid a pretty hefty price for a bad fit in that job. It can cost an organization a lot of money, a lot of time. And the results of that, when you don't have that right fit, it affected morale and the performance of the team with respect to being able to deal effectively as a manager in that job. And he failed to meet his goals. He wasn't communicating clearly. There's a delayed product launch. And you know, there's a risk of litigation in any situation where an employee is fired. The problem this organization could run into is that the job requirements and the skills were not necessarily well defined. So when you look at what went wrong, and if we could rewind that particular vignette, what went wrong was we could see that if they had taken the time to clearly identify the competencies required for success for that job, like for example, teamwork and team leadership and adaptability, what was critical for that particular job. And they were able to put into place hiring methods that was focused on those key competencies. By defining your competencies, it's a lot easier to assess them in an interview if you know what you're shooting for in terms of looking at an employee's, let's say, past performance and how they behave within that, because it's often a good predictor of future performance, but you need to know the kinds of behaviors required for successful performance. And using competencies for references in terms of reference checking that are focused on competency. So if they had had a hiring method that was focused on that, they could have saved themselves the impact they had. And that goes to performance as well. If you have clearly described behavioral expectation, you can provide that kind of feedback and coaching on those key competencies to address these gaps because you can observe them. Remember that question, how will I know it when I see it? You can see when they are not demonstrating the behaviors required for successful performance. So the competencies become the standard by which you have to assess performance because they articulate those critical behaviors. So once you have that, it's easy to coach to them and monitor and provide feedback. So let's look at another poll, our last one. I'd like you to answer this question. What went wrong? Was Joe the wrong fit for this job, or did the company fail Joe? Or both? Hey. Yes, you're right. 77% of you said both, and you are correct. Joe was the wrong fit, and the company didn't do a good job in its selection process. The company didn't do a good job in managing Joe once they hired him, either in his new role. They really failed themselves and they failed him because when an employee is looking at a job, if they can assess themselves against the competencies required for a given job, they will know their strengths and weaknesses and what's missing and what they need to do maybe to develop those to apply for that kind of job in the future. Not having it was a real shame with respect to the employee who's applying that, because that must have created a lot of stress for him in that job and for the employee in terms of the organizational impact that we saw. So having had that at the front end would have saved a lot of grief for everyone. All right, we'll close the poll and go to the next slide. We'll look at our second vignette, which deals with the loss of a good employee. So unlike Joe, Jackie is a really good fit for the new role. Jackie has 12 years of relevant experience with a strong track record and key skills. She is keen to climb the career ladder and has what it takes to do so. She accepted the job because she believed the company had a culture that really focused and fostered career development and offered advancement opportunities. So she felt she could quickly advance into a management position. Now, again, after 18 months, Jackie left the company to go to a competitor. Jackie uh, is an ambitious employee. She wanted growth, opportunity, and a roadmap to help her plan her next career move. She left because she could not see where these opportunities lied within the organization. Her manager couldn't communicate, these career path opportunities for her, and there's no mechanism or system in place to find the information she needed so she could map out her next move within the organization. So, why Jackie left? Well, she she left because, like many talented people, she was looking for advancement, and her manager was unable to give her the information she needed. Why? Because there is no career path mapped out within the organization. And he didn't have the right competencies required to empower his employees with respect to being able to develop those competencies for career advancement. And so the results of that become quite obvious when you're looking at engagement. The engagement wasn't there because she wasn't able to take charge of her career because there's no tools or support or services to enable her to do that. And she wasn't challenged in the role, so she moved on. So, that led to poor job satisfaction because she couldn't see where she fit in this organization to reach her full potential. Now, we all know the price, the cost of a good hire, and the last thing you want to do when you have a great employee with a good fit, you want to retain your employee. You don't want them leaving the organization. So the organizational impact, we ended up again spending a lot of time and money hiring and training an employee who didn't stay, and we've all been through that. The big loss was this high potential employee that we had that we could have benefited from, that could help maybe the employee grow and develop. We lost them to the competition. And that impacted performance in the organization as well. And today with social media, people talk, employees talk. It sends a message to other employees in and other people outside the organization that there's no career here. So it's demotivating for your employees, and it doesn't attract a lot of employees within the organization. So again, if the organization had the key competency defined for success, and not just Jackie's role, but in different roles, put together competency profiles that define those critical competency for each roles within the organization, that allow for career mapping, and tools that enables an employee to determine their strengths and weaknesses, and what they could do to address those gaps, and the support system in place to develop those competencies. There had been a good chance that Jackie would never have left, and that other employees would also stay. And of course, that once you have the competencies, like in the other vignette, you can have those discussions with your manager. Your manager knows the career maps in place within the organization and can help you assess your competencies and provide you with the assignments and the coaching required for successful performance. So let's look at our last vignette, vignette number 3, which deals with hiring a well-aligned candidate. So here's Rebecca. And Rebecca was hired as a customer service rep due to the competencies she brought to the job. During her interview, she really impressed the interviewers with her competencies, her achievement orientation competency, initiative, and client focused competencies, which were deemed to be really critical for success within the organization. So the company used a behavior-based interview method in hiring Rebecca. So the results were that after 16 months, Rebecca was promoted to customer service manager. So she performed exceptionally well in her job as customer service rep. She met her goals. Clients and colleagues loved working with her, which all led to this promotion. And we look at why did Rebecca succeed in this particular scenario? Well, it was a good fit. It was a good fit from the start because the employer hired her based on the competencies that not only that she had, but that they had defined as being critical to the organization and to the role, and were able to identify that at the interview when they hired her. So it was a good fit from that perspective. And she had the wherewithal, the skills to be able to learn quickly. So it was a really short learning curve. And of course, she did well because it was a good fit. So there was a higher level of engagement and job satisfaction. And she was able to take charge not only of her job right now, but also looking at her career path, what she wanted to do next. She knew there was a clear picture of what that development path was. So she did well. She did well because she was in a job that was a good fit for her. She recognized in the organization there were opportunities for her, so that motivated her. And her manager was able to recognize the behaviors required for successful performance, not only in her role, but in other roles, and be able to support her with that. So, of course, the organizational impact is from this company is that customer service delivered effectively and consistently. You're able to provide a good service to your client because you have somebody in the role who can do that well. And you've put into place competencies that really define behaviors that are your standards for hiring, and you're able to use competencies and put into place then hiring practices that help you focus on those competencies and to be able to match your an employee fit against that or employee potentials. So, and then it contributes to that, a high engagement among high-performing employees who want to stay, who want to grow the company and love working there. So, it's 1:45, the hour, and I want to summarize, excuse me, the best practices in using competencies that we saw in these vignettes. Competencies enables you in a talent management system, as we saw, to be able to hire better quality employees. And a lot of my clients put that into place for those reasons, for all of the things we talked about, because now you're able to articulate what you require for success in a given role. You're able to identify the candidates that are a good fit for those. And in the process, you've standardized your tools and methods in the selection process, because now we're using competencies that are standard for assessing and using competencies in a selection process and making those decisions. You've got interview questions, all of the things that you would need to make sure that you get better quality employees. And of course, if you can articulate to your employees your expectation in terms of what's required for successful performance in a job, you're going to have a much higher impact in their performance and achieving your organizational goals and productivity. And things always change in a role, and to me, learning and development is continuous, and having clearly defined competencies helps assess the competencies, strength, and weaknesses of employees and be able to focus on those requirements, on those behaviors needed to be addressed. So you could put learning plans, you could put career development plans in place and aligning those to the competencies that you've defined for success. And that engagement, we saw that with Rebecca, and we saw that with Jackie not having it, that it'll help with respect to retention of your employees, and you don't want to lose great employees in an organization, the cost of that. And finally, from an organizational perspective, you are looking at using competencies to build that high-performing workforce, because you're looking at succession planning, you're looking at HR planning. What are the key competencies required for successful performance of your workforce? And looking at the strengths within your organization, in terms of your future leaders and replacement, for those baby boomers that are leaving, or and planning for that with respect to your learning and development opportunities within the organization. So having using competencies in talent management makes a lot of sense. So getting started with competencies, how do you do that in an organization? Well, you need a good competency dictionary with general and technical competencies. You need a plan for implementation, to put a competency-based management framework to be able to roll that out for implementation. And you need tools to implement those competencies in each of those talent management areas. So tools for hiring, tools for performance development that your employees, managers can use. And of course, we need to sustain the strength of competency-based management initiative by having training in place that will help employees and managers use these competencies effectively within an organization. And this is how we can help. We have a full set of competency libraries to help our clients. We provide consulting engagement and services. We have tools, templates, guides to help employees, managers, organization implement competencies for various HR application and training for all of those applications as well. And I'm going to pass this on to Linda with respect to TalentGar software solutions.
Good, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. If y'all are in the market for a new or replacing strategy for your talent management initiatives, we can help with that as well. We have a full suite of technology, and we have the HRSG competencies, and so I think it's a very powerful solution. And so with that, Christine, I think what we should do is open up the floor to questions and then wrap it up here. I think we can do it right on time. And so I would suggest everybody on the phone, if you could submit your questions using the questions poll, that would be awesome. And I'll give people a minute to think about what they'd like to ask you or Talent Guard. Okay, I have one coming in. Sarah's asking, what is the average timeline to implement competencies?
It varies. It varies on the size of the organization and the goal of the project with respect to how many HR application they're looking at. But it's more in terms of phase. So the first phase is to identify why you want to use competency profiles in an organization, to be clear on the business goals you want to achieve, and then looking at developing a framework to help you put that in place. And some of the key things you need to do at the beginning is working with a competency dictionary is defining the competency profiles required for the various roles that you're going to be profiling within a given job family. And then the second phase of a CBM project is really how are we going to implement that within an organization. I've seen clients where we were able to put in place competency profiles for their organization for one, let's say, job family that was done within a few months. And when you're looking at a huge organization where they're doing this for all of their job families within an organization, can take up to a year in looking at that. So it depends on the size of the project and what you're using it for.
Okay.
Thanks for the question, Linda.
And then I have another question from Jay. I think it's referencing the interactive communication example that you had, that you showed today, and they just want to know, how long does it take to create a competency like that with all those proficiency levels?
It doesn't take a long time to do that. Back in the day when we first started in CBM, there is no such thing as a competency dictionary or a model like that. You had to create them all from scratch. And now there's a lot of products available on the market. So a lot of our customers will, well, like you, Linda, can buy the competencies and modify them, which is really an approach I would recommend. And when you look at creating, typically today, competencies from scratch like that, they're often what I call more the technical competencies, and that can take a few weeks to develop.
Good. And I have one more question from Kelly. Where do companies usually start with creating a competency library? And I think that what I'm thinking they're asking is it usually the hiring process? Is it the performance process? What have you seen in your experience?
Well, it's the pain point. It goes back to the question, why are we doing this? What kind of business problem are we trying to address? Is it, with respect to improving performance in an organization? Is it, with respect to retention of employees or employee engagement? So that focuses on where you need to start. But if you're looking at developing this has been our experience in developing competency profiles for various use, be it for career development or for hiring, talent acquisition. Once you have the competency profile developed, you could start with one specific application, one specific business need, and then expand that to others because you've developed the tools already. So every time you implement the profiles, it's like a mini project because now you have to develop the tools around that for that application. So for example, for talent acquisition, we've got the profiles. Now we need to develop maybe the interview questions. We need to develop, we need to put in place maybe some training for the HR managers and for maybe the hiring managers as well. The support tools required to implement that within the for that particular application.
Okay, great. And with that, I think we can wrap it up. I'd like to make sure that we stay on time. And are there any other final words that you have, Christine?
No, I think often people view this as a huge endeavor to put in place within their organization, but it's not. Um, it's it's a project to me that really benefits an organization when it comes to engaging their employee. It's the way. It's not disappearing any day. When we started, they thought, oh, this was a flavor of the day, but organizations with the results they've had using this as part of their talent management strategies have seen the benefits. So I guess I'm a strong believer in competency-based management and would encourage anyone when looking at the kinds of benefits we've seen and the kinds of change they're looking for to consider competencies as part of their talent management strategy.
Well, thank you. And I'd like to thank you, Christine, for providing your time today to help us learn a little bit more about competencies and their benefit. And I'd like to thank the audience for being with us today to see how they could potentially benefit from the use of competencies in their talent management initiatives. And with that, I'll just remind everybody that we are recording this webinar and we will get it all prepared and ready for download, which will be on our website and our Learning Center probably tomorrow. So thank you and have a terrific week.
Thank you.